Maya runs marketing operations, and this morning she asked Claude to summarize a brand new regulation for the compliance team. The summary came back clean, confident, and it cites subsection 4B2. Her manager pings her, send it, the meeting is in 10 minutes. Claude sounded completely sure, and that is exactly the moment to slow down. Freeze right there, because this exact moment is a question on the Claude Certified Associate exam. Anthropic wrote it themselves, it is their first official sample question. 4 options, and 3 of them are traps a real professional falls into every week. This course walks you through all 7 domains. This exam draws from using questions that work exactly like this one. And by the end of this episode, you will know the one pattern all 60 questions share. Let's kill the traps one at a time, the way you will on exam day. Option C says ask Claude to rate its own confidence, and if it says high, send it. A model's confidence about its own answer is not evidence. Models can sound certain while being wrong. Option D says reword the summary to sound more formal, then send it. Formatting touches the paint, it never touches the facts. And option A, send it as is because Claude sounded sure, is the same mistake as C wearing a suit. That leaves B, open the actual regulation and check that subsection 4B2 says what Claude says it says. That move has a name, verify, check the claim against the source it points at. Now here is the part that turns this exam from 60 separate questions into one idea. Every correct answer on this exam is one of 4 moves. Verify means check the output against the authoritative source before you act on it. Match means fit the tool to the task, the right feature, the right model, the right amount of effort. Gate means protect the data and the policy first. Redact, get permission, follow the rule, then proceed. And escalate means recognize when the call is not yours. Hand it to a human reviewer, a developer, or an architect. Verify, match, gate, escalate. Hold those 4 words because every domain we study is just these moves in different clothes. Here is the whole exam on one page, 7 domains, weighted by how many questions they carry. Prompting, output evaluation, product and model selection, workflow integration, configuration, governance, and troubleshooting. Look at the second rung, output evaluation and validation. It is about a fifth of the entire exam, the single heaviest domain, and it is exactly the Maya moment we just froze. Most people prepping for this exam study features what buttons exist, what each product does. The blueprint is telling you the opposite. The biggest slice of your score is whether you can judge what comes out of the model. This map is also your study budget. Give each domain the hours its rung deserves and no more. The shape of the test, 60 questions, 2 hours, and a scaled score where 720 passes. 2 hours for 60 questions means 2 minutes each, which is generous if you know the 4 moves and brutal if you are rereading feature documentation in your head. 2 formats show up, regular multiple choice and multiple response where more than one answer is correct. Here is the mercy rule almost nobody notices. A multiple response item always tells you how many answers to pick. If the item says pick 2, the exam just handed you information. Use it to eliminate instead of collect. We drilled that mechanic properly in the exam day episode. When your score report arrives, it shows your percentage per domain. So the map you just saw is also how you will read your own result. A quiet word about who this exam is actually for, because sitting the wrong exam wastes real money. This is the associate track. It certifies people who use Claude to do business work, operations, marketing, project management, communications. If you write code against the API or design agent systems, Anthropic points you at the developer and architect tracks instead. And these sibling courses cover those. If you have never used Claude at work, the honest advice is to spend a month using it on real tasks first. The exam assumes hands-on habits. One honest logistics note, registration currently runs through Anthropic's Partner Academy, which is tied to organizations in their partner network. Policies like that change, so check the current registration page before you schedule anything. The skills are worth having either way. They are simply what competent AI use at work looks like now. Here is how we are going to do this together. One episode per domain in blueprint order. And the heavyweight domain gets two because it has earned them. You will keep meeting the same three people: Maya, who does the work, Dan, her manager, who wants everything shipped an hour ago, and Priya from compliance, who asks us the questions that keep everyone employed. That is on purpose, because every single exam question is a tiny workplace story, and you should practice inside stories, not flashcard lists. After the domains come three finishing episodes: a question lab where we run scenarios back to back, an exam day episode on pacing and the multiple response mechanic, and a capstone that plays one entire workday through all seven domains. Alongside the videos, do two things on your own. Read the official exam guide once slowly. It is short and it is the authoritative source for everything I just showed you. And keep using Claude on your real work while you study. The exam rewards lived habits over memorized trivia. Before we close, let's prove the pattern generalizes. New scenario, different domain, same four moves. Dan wants customer trends analyzed today, and he hands Maya a spreadsheet full of customer names and account numbers. Company policy restricts sharing regulated personal data. So, what is the move? Option 1: upload it as is. The analysis is internal after all. Internal is not a policy exemption. Struck. Option 2: upload it but tell Claude not to retain anything. An instruction to the model is not a policy control. The data still left the boundary. Struck. Option 3: skip the analysis entirely. Refusing the work when a safe path exists is its own kind of failure. Struck. Option 4: strip or anonymize the identifiers first, then run the analysis. Consistent with policy. That is gate. Protect the data first, then do the work. Same skeleton as Maya citation: a tempting shortcut, a fake safeguard, an overreaction, and one professional move. Learn to see the skeleton, and the costume stops fooling you. So, the pattern: every correct answer is verify, match, gate, or escalate. The map, 7 domains, and the biggest one is judging output, not writing prompts. The shape, 60 questions, 2 hours, 720 passes. And Maya, she opened the regulation. Subsection 4b2 said something subtly different. She fixed the summary and then sent it. Dan never knew how close that was, which is the whole job, honestly. Next episode, Domain 1, Prompting and Task Execution, where Maya learns why her longest prompt of the week produced her worst output of the week. Maya spent 40 minutes on this prompt. It is the longest one she has written all week. 15 instructions, every rule she could think of, and the entire quarterly campaign report requested in one send. The answer comes back fast and it is mush, a generic report that could describe any company with half her instructions ignored. Her short, quick prompts worked fine all week, and her longest prompt of the week just produced her worst output of the week. This is Domain 1, Prompting and Task Execution, about one question in 7 on your exam. By the end of this episode, you will know exactly why more instructions made the output worse. And then we will rebuild Maya's prompt the way the exam wants it built. Here is the mental model that runs this whole domain. Treat Claude like a contractor you hired this morning. A new contractor is smart and capable and knows nothing about your company, your products, your acronyms, or your goals until you say them. Maya's 15 instructions never said who reads the report, what it is for, which campaign it covers, or what a good version looks like. A briefing: a contractor can act on carries 4 things: the context, the specific ask, the audience, and what success looks like. Now look at what her prompt had instead. Most of the 15 lines were prohibitions. Do not sound salesy, do not run long, do not use jargon, do not repeat last quarter's tagline. Official guidance points the other way. Tell Claude what to do. One positive instruction beats a wall of do nots. And one more thing a contractor loves: a sample. One past report in the voice you want teaches more than 10 sentences describing that voice. Fitting the briefing to the task is the match move from episode 1, and that stamp will keep landing all episodes. So length was never Maya's problem. Her prompt was long in the wrong places and silent in the right ones. Missing context was only half the diagnosis. The other half is that Maya asked for a finished deliverable in one send, and official guidance says to break complex requests into sub-steps. A quarterly campaign report is not one task. It is a chain. Pull the metrics, find what changed, draft the narrative, format it for the audience. Ask for those steps one at a time, and a wrong number gets caught at step 1 instead of baked invisibly into a finished draft. There is an even cheaper safeguard. Ask for the plan before any work happens. Maya types list the data you will need and the assumptions you will make, and let me review before you proceed. The plan comes back. Assuming the push ran in all 4 regions, it ran in 2, and one sentence of review just saved the entire draft. People worry that steps burn extra messages. The documented experience is the opposite. Errors caught early mean less total back and forth. One distinction the exam likes to probe: grouping means several small related questions in one message to save usage. Decomposition means one complex task split into reviewable stages. Small and related group them, big and complex break it down. Time to make this pay on exam day: same skeleton, different costume. An operations lead has 5 vendor proposals, and leadership wants a scored comparison with a recommendation. Option A: upload all 5 proposals with the message, compare these and tell me which vendor to pick. There are no criteria in that ask, so there is no standard the answer can ever be checked against struck. Option B: write one long prompt containing every criterion, formatting rule, and edge case, so the whole deliverable arrives in one response. That is Maya's mega prompt wearing a tie. Complex, unreliable work gets split into multiple prompts. Struck. Option C: run 5 separate chats, one per vendor, then merge the 5 summaries yourself. No conversation ever sees 2 proposals side by side, so nothing in that plan can actually compare anything. Struck. Option D: ask Claude to first list the comparison criteria and the data it will extract from each proposal, review that plan, then score one criterion at a time. Plan first, then discrete reviewable steps. That is the documented method, and the match stamp lands on option D. Even the rebuild process hits a snag. The drafting step returns the right structure in a tone too stiff for a leadership readout, and that is normal. The first prompt rarely works perfectly. Maya's old reflex is to open a fresh chat and write an even bigger prompt, which throws away all the context the conversation has already built. The official mechanism is feedback inside the same conversation, follow-up instructions, and rewrite requests. Targeted feedback names what to keep and what to change. Keep the structure, warm the tone up, match this attached sample. Compare that to hammering regenerate on an identical prompt. Nothing new goes in, so nothing about the miss can come out fixed. This also settles where to start. Start simple and add a constraint only where the output actually fell short. That is the quiet answer to our cold open. Maya's 15 rules were guesses about failures she had not seen yet. One question remains: how does she know the new draft is actually better? Her briefing named the success criteria, so she checks the draft against them, and that checking move is verify, the second stamp of the episode. Zoom out from the report, because Maya's same warning actually holds 4 different kinds of tasks. An anomaly hunt in the metrics export, a scan of competitor announcements, the report draft itself, and a name for the next campaign. The exam's 4th objective is that these 4 do not get the same prompt shape. Analysis wants maximum specificity plus a stated method, exact metrics, exact time window, the calculation you want, the output format. Research tasks want the scope matched to the tool. A single fact suits a quick web lookup. A many source synthesis suits the deeper research mode that returns a cited report. Buttons and feature names move around. So learn that sorting logic and check the current app for where things live. Drafting is ruled by the example and the audience. One sample of the voice you want does more than a paragraph of adjectives. Brainstorming is the one place you loosen the grip, state the goal and the boundaries, ask for many varied options, then converse through follow ups. Underneath all four, it is still a contracted briefing with the emphasis moved, and reading the task type to pick the shape is the match move again. Now let's put the whole episode on one screen and rebuild the prompt that opened it. The context slot gets the campaign, the two regions it ran in, and why the report exists. The audience slot says Dan and the leadership readout, and the success slot names the criteria the final draft has to pass. The wall of do nots collapses into one positive style line with last quarter's best report attached as the sample. The giant single ask becomes a plan request and 4 steps, and Maya reviews the plan before any drafting begins. 2 turns of targeted feedback later, the draft passes her own criteria. Nothing about the model changed, the only thing that changed was the briefing. The rebuilt prompt is shorter than the original and it wins because every line in it is doing a job. The scorecard, a prompt is a contracted briefing, complex work gets a plan and steps, a miss gets targeted feedback in the same conversation, and the prompt's shape follows the task type. One last question before we close, and it is a task type call. An analyst needs a briefing on a dozen competitors' recent announcements synthesized with sources she can check. Relying on a plain chat from training memory dies first. Recent announcements are exactly where uncited memory is weakest. Turning on deeper thinking dies next. Harder reasoning fetches nothing new from the outside world. A single quick web lookup dies last. 1 or 2 searches cannot synthesize a dozen companies. The answer is the deep research mode, mini searches, and one-cited report. The tool scope matched to the task scope. Maya's report goes out on time, and Dan forwards it to leadership without touching a word. Next episode, we start the heaviest domain on the exam, judging what comes out of the model, and it opens with Claude inventing a plausible statistic for Maya's campaign deck. The statistic lands on Maya's campaign slide, and it looks perfect. 73% of buyers shortlist a vendor before ever talking to sales, according to the Evelyn Group's annual buyer survey. One problem, the Evelyn Group does not exist and neither does the survey. Judging output like this is the single heaviest skill on the exam. About a fifth of everything you will answer, the biggest block there is. It is so heavy that it gets 2 episodes, and this one teaches exactly one skill, spotting the lie before it ships. Let's rewind to how that number caught on the slide. Rewind an hour. Dan wants one strong market statistic for the opening slide, something that makes the quarterly push feel urgent. Maya asks Claude, and Claude delivers a specific percentage with a named industry report attached, formatted like a footnote from a real deck. After the subsection incident, Maya has a new reflex, so before the deck ships, she goes looking for the report itself. No research firm by that name, no survey, no 73%, nothing. The citation was manufactured, and Anthropic has a name for this, a fabricated citation, a reference that looks authoritative and sounds convincing while being grounded in nothing. Notice what her eyes could never have caught. There is no tail inside the text. The fake footnote is formatted exactly like a real one. Which gives you the first rule of this domain: a citation is only verified once you have opened it. To spot these reliably, you need to know why they happen, and the reason is almost disappointingly mechanical. Claude does not look answers up in some internal database of facts. It predicts what text should come next, one piece at a time. Watch what that means for Maya's footnote. The words according to a report by are on the page, so the machine continues them the way thousands of real reports continue, with a firm name, a survey title, and a crisp percentage. It is completing the shape of a citation, not retrieving one, and the shape is all it owes you. Anthropic's own documentation says Even the most advanced models can generate text that is factually incorrect or inconsistent with the context you gave them, and it calls this hallucination. Here is the detail in their guidance I find most revealing. Simply giving Claude explicit permission to say, I don't know, drastically reduces false information. Read that backwards. By default, the machine would rather produce a confident answer than admit uncertainty, unless you invite the admission. So, confidence is the house style. The text sounds sure whether the fact underneath is real or invented. Anthropic's help documentation names three specific failure modes to check for, and they make a good pocket checklist. First, outdated training data. The model's knowledge stops at some point in the past. So anything current prices, leadership, regulations may be stale even when it is stated as today's truth. Maya's version of that one, last quarter's competitor pricing delivered as if it were this morning's. Second, fabricated citations. The Aberline group quotes and references that look real and are grounded in nothing. Third, plausible sounding errors. Answers with no fake source attached, just a confident claim that happens to be wrong. The third kind is the hardest. Because there is nothing to look up, the sentence itself is the whole crime scene. One posture covers all three, and it is Anthropic's own baseline. Do not rely on Claude as a singular source of truth, and scrutinize anything high stakes. Now watch Maya's exact situation arrive as an exam question because it will. A marketing coordinator drafts a competitive analysis with Claude, and the draft includes market share statistics with citations to industry reports. The deck goes to the executive team and then into a public webinar. So, what happens before it ships? Option A, include the draft as is since Claude provided citations for every statistic. You already know this one. A citation is unverified until opened, and fabricated citations are a named failure mode struck. Option B, ask Claude to double check its own statistics and confirm they are accurate. That check is generated by the same machine with the same failure modes. A confident yes is just more text struck. Option C, spot check the one statistic that looks surprising and ship if it holds up. The dangerous fabrications are the unsurprising ones, and one passing check says nothing about the rest struck. That leaves D, open each cited report and verify every statistic against its source. Because external facing plus factual means every claim gets checked. Verify the same stamp as the cold open, and it will not be the last time today. Accuracy has a quieter tween that almost nobody checks for: completeness. An output can be true in every sentence and still have silently dropped the thing you needed. Maya has met this one too. A 40-page brand study covering 6 markets, summarized into 5 clean insights, and the summary quietly covers 4 of the markets. Nothing in it is wrong, 2 markets are simply gone, and no sentence anywhere announces the absence. The trap is that a full-looking table reads as a complete table. An operations team has Claude extract penalty clauses from a dozen vendor contracts. Every row comes back filled, and 2 of the contracts had amendments the extraction never saw. So here is a working rule: check completeness against the source document or your original list of requirements, never against how finished the output feels. Silence is the failure mode here, and silence never trips an alarm on its own. Here is a warning light most people wave away. Ask the same factual question twice and you get 2 different answers. One run says $49 a seat, the next says $59. Anthropic's guidance is blunt about what that flicker can mean. Inconsistencies across outputs could indicate hallucinations. 2 answers to one question means at least one of them is wrong, so the honest status for both is unverified. The reflex to resist is asking a third time and trusting whichever number shows up twice, because majority vote among guesses is still guessing. The fix is boring and external: the competitor's actual pricing page or the supplier's actual documentation. In other words, the source. There is a deliberate, repeatable version of this retry trick, and it belongs to next episode's playbook. For now, treat the flicker as the smoke alarm it is. One more thing to spot: and it is the one with real people on the other end bias. Bias rarely announces itself, it shows up in framing, which details get emphasized, which examples get chosen, whose story gets told generously. An HR coordinator uses Claude to shortlist 200 internal applications, and spot checking reveals the summaries describe career gaps negatively for some profiles and neutrally for others. No single summary looks wrong on its own. The skew only appears when you compare comparable cases. That comparison is the working check. Does the output treat comparable cases comparably? And does it lean on proxies like names, addresses, or gaps in employment? Anthropic's usage policy treats decisions about people, hiring, housing, lending, insurance, admissions as its most serious category precisely because a biased output at scale becomes a discriminatory outcome at scale. Those uses carry a hard requirement about human review. And that is next episode's territory. For today, know that anything ranking or scoring people is where the bias check stops being optional. Framing is output too, so judge it the way you judge the facts. So Maya, she cuts the statistic, tells Dan the report does not exist, and rebuilds the slide on a dollar number pulled from their own campaign analytics, one she can defend in the room. The deck ships an hour late and entirely true, which is the trade this domain keeps asking you to make. Your scorecard, 3 named failure modes, the quiet completeness check, the flicker warning light, and the comparable cases test for bias. One last question, and it is pure warning light. A project manager preparing a capacity plan asks Claude about a supplier's lead times twice and gets 2 different figures. Option A says use the most recent figure, but recency is not evidence both runs came from the same model struck. Option B says average the two, but averaging 2 possible hallucinations manufactures a third unverified number struck. Option D says ask a third time and trust whichever figure appears twice, but majority vote among outputs is still the model grading itself struck. That leaves C. The inconsistency signals possible hallucination. So treat the figure as unverified and confirm it against the supplier's own documentation. Verify the whole episode in one stamp. Next episode, part 2 of this domain, the validation playbook. Now that Maya can spot the lie, what is the repeatable checking routine and when must a human sign off? Maya's pricing announcement came back this morning and Priya from compliance put it down with one question: who verified this before it goes out? Maya wants to say, I read it twice and I caught 2 bad numbers myself last week. And out loud, that answer sounds exactly as thin as it is. Spotting problems when you happen to see them is a skill, and nobody can sign their name under a skill. So this episode builds the process, a one-page validation routine Maya can run every time and hand to Priya with a straight face. We are still inside the heaviest domain on the exam, output evaluation and validation, about a fifth of your whole score. Part 1 of this domain was learning to see the problems. This part is what you do about them, in what order, and when the answer is not yours to give. The whole routine is built from moves you already know from episode 1, verify, escalate, and match. Maya starts the rebuild by changing where facts are allowed to come from. She attaches the pricing policy and the service terms and tells Claude to use only these documents, not its general knowledge. That one instruction is an official Anthropic technique, and it turns an open-ended essay into a closed book exam. Then she adds the strangest sounding line in the playbook. If you do not have enough information, say I don't know. Anthropic's docs are blunt about this one. Permission to admit uncertainty drastically reduces false information. Without that permission, the model fills every gap with its best guess because you ask for an answer and it aims to please. 2 answers come back as I don't know, and that is the routine working. Those 2 were the guesses. The gaps are now questions Maya can take to a human who knows instead of fiction she would have shipped. Next rule, every claim in the draft has to carry a receipt. She asks Claude to attach a word-for-word supporting code from the documents to every factual claim it makes. One claim about renewal discounts cannot find its quote, and the rule is merciless, no quote, no claim, it comes out. This is straight from Anthropic's own documentation. Their example is a press release where every unsupported line gets pulled. Then the step no shortcut survives. Maya opens the pricing policy herself and reads each quote sitting in its source. A quote counts as verified only after a human has seen it in place, because fabricated citations look exactly like real ones. One effective date still feels wobbly, so she asks the same question again in a fresh chat and compares the two runs. Two runs, two different dates means the fact is unverified, and the fix is the policy document, not a third run. Hold the hierarchy, everything inside the tool reduces errors, and the final check for anything that matters lies outside the model. Right on cue, Dan arrives with a vendor's master services agreement north of 100 pages, asking what the penalties are if we exit early. This is an exam question almost word for word. An analyst needs Claude to assess penalty and termination clauses across a long contract, and which approach does Anthropic's guidance most directly support? Option A. Tell Claude to be extremely careful and professional because the document is important. Tone instructions do not ground a single claim in the text. Careful is a mood, not a method. Struck. Option C. Break the work into many small chats so each response stays short. The risk here is fabricated clause content, not long responses, and 20 short chats can fabricate 20 times. Struck. Option D. Get the full analysis, then have Claude rate its confidence in each finding. Self-rated confidence is generated text with the same failure modes as the answer it grades. Struck. That leaves option B. Have Claude first extract word for word codes of the relevant clauses, then base the analysis only on those codes. Quotes first, analysis second. The grounding technique built exactly for long documents. Stamp it, verify, and notice Maya learned nothing new to answer it. The routine she just built answered an exam question by itself. One customer question in the FAQ asks whether the new plan changes how invoices are taxed, and Claude has drafted a confident little paragraph about tax treatment. Every technique so far still applies here, and none of them is enough because this answer is no longer Maya's call to make. Anthropic's usage policy draws a hard line in high-risk domains. A qualified professional must review the content before it reaches anyone. Note the verb must. This is not a best practice you weigh against a deadline, it is a requirement. The domains on that list read like the places where mistakes do not bounce: legal interpretation, medical advice, insurance decisions, lending and investment calls, hiring, housing admissions, and published media. That list is a snapshot of a version policy, so read the current version before exam day. The structure is what lasts. Tax treatment on a customer invoice is a financial question, so Maya routes that one answer to Priya's team review before publication, not after. The same policy tier adds a second duty. The customer must be told that AI helped produce the advice they are getting. And the trap version of this rule, having Claude review its own draft, is not the review the policy means. The reviewer is a human who could have written the answer. Stamp it, escalate, and hear it the way the exam means it. Knowing something is not your call is a passing answer, not a failing one. With the facts verified and the tax answer routed, Maya still owes two different rooms the same news. Executives need the short version plus the decision they are being asked to make. Customers need plain words about what changes for them and when. The move is to tell Claude who each output is for and what that reader has to do with it. Audience and purpose stated out loud. Today's product implementation even ships presets for this, styles that shift tone and detail level, but the durable skill is naming the audience, whatever the menu looks like this quarter. Then the trap that catches careful people, a rewrite is a new output. Make this friendlier can soften a warning or quietly drop a caveat, so the customer version gets the same code check the original did. And refine the draft you have instead of regenerating from scratch. The corrections you fought for live in that conversation. That is the first half of match, same verified facts, refit to the reader. Last decision on the page, what shape each deliverable takes, and the rule is that format follows what happens to the output next. A quick answer somebody reads once belongs inline right there in the conversation. A document people will keep editing and reusing belongs in an artifact. And the official bar is content that is substantial, more than a dozen lines, and stands on its own without the chat around it. Maya's customer FAQ is exactly that, a living document the team will revise all quarter, so it leaves as an artifact with its version history. The plan by plan price changes are headed into the billing tracker, so she asks for them as a fixed column table, structured data for a handoff. The source documents themselves live in the project's knowledge base, so every future chat starts grounded in the same two files. Choose by destiny, discussed once means inline, maintained means artifact, imported means structured. Second half of match, fit the container to where the work is going. Here is Maya's whole answer to Priya. One page. Ground it, sources attached, general knowledge off, I don't know allowed. Receipt it, every claim carries a supporting quote, no claim. Check it, open the source yourself, and let disagreement between runs demote any fact back to unverified. Escalate it, anything touching the high risk list gets a qualified human before anyone outside sees it, with the AI's role disclosed. Refit and fit, name the audience for every version, then match the format to what happens next. Now watch what the page does. It stamps itself, verify, escalate, match. The routine is the answer pattern wearing work clothes. So the playbook, ground, receipt, check, escalate, refit, fit, and the page signs itself with 3 of the 4 moves. One last exam question at speed. An HR team wants Claude to draft individualized answers to employees' severance eligibility questions and send them automatically to save review time. Option A says nothing extra is needed because it is all internal, but the policy trigger is impact on a person, not which side of the firewall they sit on, struck. Option B adds a disclaimer that AI may make mistakes, and a footer is neither the required review nor honest disclosure, struck. Option D upgrades to the most capable model so review can be skipped and no model tier buys you out of a policy requirement, struck. Option C, a qualified professional reviews every response before it reaches the employee and the AI assistance is disclosed. Escalate, severance eligibility is employment advice about one specific person and the human comes before the send button. Back at Maya's desk, Priya reads the one-page routine, initials the corner, and the question that opened this episode finally has an answer with names in it. Next episode, Dan asks why the deep analysis is suddenly slow and expensive, and Maya learns which brain to rent for which job. Dan is at Maya's desk with 2 complaints, and he has brought the evidence for both. The deep quarterly analysis she ran through Claude came back excellent, but it came back slow and it ate a startling share of the team's usage limits. And her 100 short replies to routine customer questions each came back as 3 careful paragraphs, where 2 plain sentences would have done the job. So Dan says the thing managers say, this tool is too slow and too expensive. Maybe we should look at something else. Freeze there, because this is domain 3 of the exam product and model selection, about 1 question in 8 on your test. This episode teaches the skill Dan is accidentally asking for, which brain to rent for which job. Because the tool was not wrong twice, the match was Maya ran both jobs on the same brain at the same setting. And one of Anthropic's own official sample questions is hiding inside that stack of overwrought replies. We will face it in a moment. Before we get to models, there is a smaller matching decision people fumble every day, which feature to reach for. So let's walk Maya's own task list through it. Plain chat is the default, one-off questions, quick drafts, small edits, anything that does not need to be remembered tomorrow. A project is a workspace with its own knowledge base. Maya uploads the campaign documents once and every future chat inside that project starts already briefed. The research feature is for investigation. It runs a series of linked searches and returns one synthesized answer with citations you can check. And an artifact is a deliverable living in its own window beside the chat, a document or a small working tool that keeps its versions and can be shared beyond the conversation. None of these is a smarter mode. Each one fixes a specific weakness of plain chat, context that resets, answers that need many sources, output that needs a life of its own. So the shorthand recurring context becomes a project, a multi source investigation becomes research, a deliverable you will iterate or share becomes an artifact, and everything else stays plain chat. Inside the lookup family, Anthropic publishes its own rule, and it is so exam shaped, I want you to hear it twice. A quick fact needs a search, hard reasoning on information you already hold needs thinking time, and a report drawn from many sources for a skeptical reader needs the research feature. Once more, slowly, searching is for finding, thinking is for working it out, and research is for gathering and citing at scale. Notice Maya's quarterly analysis was a thinking job all along. The data already sat on her desk, so giving it depth was the right call. Hold that thought for Dan. Now, the models themselves and the official exam guide names the three tiers outright: Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus. Haiku is the fastest and cheapest tier, built for well scoped work that runs in volume. Sonnet is the balanced middle, near flagship quality at a fraction of the cost, and the sensible default for most work. Opus is the most capable tier for problems where a wrong answer costs more than the compute ever will. Model names and version numbers change all the time, so check the current lineup before exam day. But the ladder itself does not move, fastest and cheapest at the bottom, most capable at the top. The exam guide hands you the three axes for choosing a rung: cost, speed, and quality, and each one is a plain question. How good does this have to be? How quickly must it come back? And how many times will it run? Volume is the axis everyone forgets. One question on the big model is a rounding error. The same choice inside a job that runs 1,000 times a day is a budget line someone will eventually circle. The professional pattern is to start balanced, drop down when a task proves routine, and step up when the stakes rise or the quality misses. And speed only matters when a human is waiting, live work leans fast, and overnight analysis can afford the slow, capable brain, which is already half of Maya's defense. Here is the promise from the cold open Anthropic's second official sample question, and it is Maya's reply stack almost word for word. An associate needs a high volume of short customer reply drafts. Speed and cost matter more than deep reasoning which choice best fits the task. Option A: use the most capable, highest cost model for every reply to maximize quality. Quality sounds unarguable, which is what makes this the politest trap on the exam. Capability the task never uses is pure spend struck. Option C: disable all product features to reduce cost. That cuts capability without touching the mismatch. The replies are still running on the wrong tier, just with fewer tools struck. Option D: switch to a different AI platform. The dramatic move that dodges the correct small one. The mismatch would simply travel along in the luggage. Struck. That leaves B: use a faster, lower cost model suited to straightforward high volume tasks. There is our stamp match, and read the direction of that answer carefully. The exam rewarded picking the cheaper model, and Anthropic's own rationale says the top model everywhere wastes the cost and latency budget. One more piece of this domain, the one that degrades quietly while nobody watches: context. Every chat has a working memory, everything Claude can see at once, and it is large but it is finite. Maya has one chat she has lived in for 6 weeks, vendor quotes at the top, hiring notes in the middle, budget at the bottom, and lately it misremembers the vendor's terms. That is not the model getting worse. That is the oldest material being compressed or slipping out of view, and the compression is lossy on purpose. Long chats also cost more than they look, because every new message rereads the whole pile above it before answering. So the exam wants a three-way judgment from you: restart, summarize, or persist. Restart when the chat has drifted across topics. Open a fresh one and carry over a short summary instead of the archaeology. Summarize when you need continuity in place, Ask for a compressed state of the thread and restate the facts that must not blur. Persist when the context will be needed again and again, which is exactly what a project is for. Move the durable documents in once and stop hauling them from chat to chat. Claude also keeps a separate cross-chat memory about you and your work, which is useful, but do not confuse the curated notebook with the finite desk. The exam checks that you know they are different things. Before the last question, a quiet word about the feeling underneath this domain. Choosing the cheaper model can feel like giving the work less respect, so people quietly route everything to the biggest brain to be safe. The exam takes the opposite view, and so does every good operations lead. Cost is a real professional consideration, not stinginess. Matching down is the same skill as matching up. Both come from reading the task honestly instead of flattering it. The person who runs routine replies on the fast tier is the same person who can defend real money for the quarterly analysis because both choices came from the same reasoning. So Maya reroutes her week, and then Dan, being Dan, arrives with a brand new ask, and it makes a perfect closing question. He needs a briefing this afternoon on how 8 competitors changed their pricing over the past year, with sources his director can check. Option 1. Ask in a normal chat. Claude already knows the major competitors. Built-in knowledge has a cutoff and carries no citations. A year of pricing moves would come back, part memory and part guess struck. Option 2. Run a separate quick search on each competitor and stitch the 8 results together by hand. Quick search is for 1 or 2 lookups. 8 of them stitched manually is rebuilding the research feature badly on a deadline struck. Option 3. Upload last year's competitor deck to a project and ask Claude to update it from memory. A project holds your documents. It does not fetch a year of outside changes, and from memory is option 1 back again in a nicer jacket struck. That leaves the research feature, linked searches, one synthesized briefing, citations attached, and the match stamp lands one last time. So the scorecard features are matched to the shape of the work, models are matched on quality, speed, and volume, and long chats get restarted, summarized, or persisted before they drift. And Dan, he got his cited briefing. The same afternoon, the customer replies now come back as 2 quick sentences on the fast tier. And the quarterly analysis still runs deep on the big model because it earns it. Next episode, Domain 4 Workflow Design, where Dan says roll it out to the whole team, and Maya discovers that a tool is not a workflow. The message from Dan lands late on a Thursday. This is great, roll Claude out to the whole marketing team by Friday. He has just watched Maya's model matching save the quarterly push a day of rework. So in his head, the math is simple, more people, more saved days. Maya's first instinct is to open her prompt library and forward the whole thing to the team. Here, use what works for me. Freeze on that instinct because this is domain 4 of your exam, workflow integration and solution design, roughly 1 question in 6, the second heaviest slice of your 60 questions. The exam gives it that weight because forwarding your prompts is exactly how most Claude rollouts die. A tool is not a workflow. By the end of this episode, you will know how to turn one person's trick into a process a team can run and how the exam tests every step of that turn. Maya has until Friday to learn it, so let's walk it with her. So what does Maya do instead of hitting forward? She spends the first hour on a boring question: where does this team's week actually go? Not where people say it goes, where it goes. So she collects the real material, the campaign briefs, the status threads, the content calendar, and the Friday matrix review that everyone groans about. She gives Claude that pile and briefs it like a brand new coworker, full context, nothing assumed, and asks it to map the week step by step. Then she works in stages. First list the steps, then mark which ones are rule-based and which need judgment, then flag where the hours pool, then and only then talk about what to change. One giant prompt would give her one giant answer she cannot check. Stage prompts give her stages she can. For the trade-off and gap spotting, she turns on extended thinking, the setting made for hard reasoning that needs no new information. And the map surprises her. The step everyone demos is social copy, but the block that eats the week is assembling the Friday metrics review. That is the domain's first rule. Pick the step with leverage, not the step that demos well. Before Maya designs anything, she needs one more distinction because different shapes of work want different Claude tools, and the exam loves this distinction. A quick factual lookup wants a simple web search, hard reasoning on facts you already hold wants extended thinking, and a mini source investigation wants research mode. Research mode runs searches that build on each other and comes back with a cited synthesis, and the citations matter because Claude said so is not a source your director will accept. Connected to the team's workspace, it can fold internal mail and files into the same investigation, still citing the exact originals it used. For planning documents, you can stack the two. Thinking first, so Claude plans its approach, then research to gather comprehensively. And for process optimization, the move is almost embarrassingly direct hand. Claude the documented process and ask where the waste is, which steps could batch, and which steps exist only to feed another step. Maya runs exactly that on the Friday review and gets back a short bottleneck list with one item circled, the manual collection of updates from mail and chat, and a folder of files. Notice she still has not built anything, and that is the point. Analysis first is what stops you automating the wrong step. Here is how a domain 4 question will come at this exact skill. So let's play it at pace. An operations lead wants requirements for automating invoice processing, and she already holds the current process document plus 3 months of exception logs. What is the strongest first move with Claude? Option A says, just ask Claude to write the requirements. It has seen plenty of invoice systems. And option C says, run research mode to see how other companies automate invoices. A dies because ungrounded asks, produce generic boilerplate while her real evidence sits unused. And C dies because the binding constraints are internal, her process and her exceptions, and the web cannot see either one. Option D says, commission a custom skill encoding the invoice workflow before any analysis. And that is over engineering. You encode a procedure once it is settled, and nothing is settled before the analysis. That leaves B, upload the document and the logs, then stage the analysis, extract the steps, classify rule-based versus judgment, flag the gaps, then draft the requirements. Stamp it match fit the approach to the evidence in front of you, and notice it is the exact sequence Maya just ran on her own team. Back to Maya, who now knows her target is the Friday review, and the temptation is to roll the fix out to everyone at once. She does something smaller and smarter. She designs a pilot, one teammate running the one redesign step for a week. And before the pilot starts, she writes down what good looks like. Every number in the draft must carry a citation to its source, and the human review pass must come in under an hour. Define the bar before the pilot, because a bar defined afterwards always bends to fit whatever happened. The solution itself she drafts with Claude as an artifact, a working template for the review that lives in its own window instead of scrolling away in chat. Every revision is kept as a version, so when Dan asks why the format changed, she can show the passes instead of arguing from memory. She even mocks the finished review as a small clickable artifact because a draft people can touch communicates a design better than a paragraph, and it costs minutes. The pilot runs, she measures against the bar she wrote, the citation rule holds, and the review pass comes in under the hour. Only then does she widen it. And that loop is what the exam means by solution design, requirements, draft, critique, revise, version, measure, then widen. Now the question that decides whether this survives contact with the team, what exactly changes in their week, and this picture is the whole domain in one drawing. In the before row, a human walks the sources by hand, chasing mail and chat threads and a folder of files, and assembles the draft from scratch most of a day. In the after row, that one step belongs to Claude, connected to the team's tools, so it drafts the review with citations pointing at the exact messages and files it used. And directly after it sits a box that was never in the old row, a named human review. The reviewer follows the citations before anything moves, which is the verify move built into the process itself. Every other box stays exactly where it was. Same owner, same deadline. This is called augmenting the workflow. You insert Claude into the painful step and leave the rest alone. And it is the pattern Anthropic's own case studies describe: augment first, measure, redesign later. Redesign gets its day, but only when the seams show, when you notice boxes that existed only to feed a box that no longer needs feeding. Two facts guard this design. Connectors inherit your existing permissions, so Claude cannot see anything you cannot, and every action it takes needs explicit human approval. One box, one review, everything else untouched. That is what a trustworthy first integration looks like. Friday morning, Maya has to sell this to the room, and the exam grades that conversation as seriously as it grades the design. Her value slide has no adjectives on it, just the pilot result, what the review used to cost the team and what it costs now with the human still reading every draft. Then she does the thing most presenters skip: she puts up a limitations slide on purpose. Claude has a knowledge cutoff, so anything newer has to come from search or from documents you hand it. Claude can be confidently wrong, so drafts are drafts. Humans own the facts and humans own the decision. And the controls are already in the design. Actions need approval. The mail connector drafts and never sends, permissions are inherited, and admins can tighten all of it. Priya looks up from her notebook and asks the only question that matters: what happens when it is wrong? Maya has a real answer. Every draft passes the named reviewer who follows the citations before anything leaves the team. And anything the reviewer cannot verify or anything touching customer data escalates to a person with authority to decide. It never ships on the model's word. That is the escalate move worn as a process, and you can watch the room relax as she says it, because the limitation slide is what earns the trust, not the demo. The rollout gets its yes, and then Dan, already dreaming bigger, asks the question that closes our loop. Can Claude just answer our client emails automatically end to end? That is a domain 4 exam question wearing Dan's face. So let's finish the way we started at base. One answer says yes, connect the mail and it handles clients end to end. And that is overpromising against a documented hard limit. The first bad autopilot email would kill the whole program. One says no, Claude cannot work with email at all, and that undersells it badly. Searching mail and preparing cited drafts removes most of the manual work. One says yes, but only on the most capable model, which confuses the model axis with the integration axis. Connector behavior is not a model tier feature. The accurate answer carries value and limitation in the same breath. Claude can search the mail and prepare drafts. It cannot send. Actions need approval, so a human reviews and a human sends. Stamp it escalate, sending to a client is not the tool's call, and because guardrails like these are product decisions, verify the current behavior before you put it on a slide. So the scorecard map where the time actually goes before you build. Pilot small against a bar. You wrote first augment one step and put a review after it, and put the limits on the slide yourself. Maya's rollout goes out Friday afternoon, not a folder of forwarded prompts, a process with one new box and one new review, and Dan never learns how close the prompt dump came. Next episode: configuration and knowledge management, because Maya just noticed she has pasted the same brand context into chats all week and there is a better home for it. It is Friday morning and Maya is pasting the same brand voice paragraph into a fresh chat for the 5th time this week. Same paragraph, same product sheet, every morning since Monday, and this time she catches herself mid-sigh. Freeze that sigh, because this exact frustration is domain 5 of the associate exam, configuration and knowledge management, and it carries about one question in 8 on your test. The domain name sounds like settings menus, and underneath it is one judgment, asked 7 ways: where should this context live? This episode builds the answer around Maya's week, a permanent home for the context she keeps retyping, and then the part most people skip: what keeps that home from quietly rotting. Watch the paste one more time, because it is about to be the last one. A project is a workspace with its own chats and its own shelf of documents, sealed off from everything else you do. Maya creates one for the quarterly push, and inside it there are exactly two places to put things: instructions and knowledge. Instructions answer one question: how should Claude behave in every chat inside this project? Her brand voice paragraph finally lands there, along with the standing order to check every product claim against the sheet. Knowledge answers the other question: what is true here? So the product sheet and the pricing one pager get uploaded once and stay. The split matters on the exam: behavior goes in instructions, facts go in knowledge, and mixing them fails in both directions. A rule book buried inside a knowledge document is not treated as standing orders, and a fact sheet pasted into instructions just crowds every chat it rides along with. Now, the documented detail exams love the project's name and its description are organization for humans. Claude cannot read them. Call the box always be formal, and nothing becomes formal. The model sees only the instructions and the knowledge inside. Here is what that does to her week. 5 scattered chats slide together into one labeled box, and the next chat she opens already knows everything. That is the match move from episode 1, wearing configuration clothes, not a better prompt, the right home for the context. Stay on the knowledge shelf a moment because how you stock it decides what you get back. Uploading once beats fasting daily, even on pure economics. Project documents are cached, so returning to them barely touches your usage. But the shelf rewards a librarian, and the official guidance reads like library rules, descriptive file names, related documents grouped together. And when you need a specific one, call it by name in your prompt. A shelf of files named Final Version 2 is how a project starts citing the wrong quarter with total confidence. One mechanical fact to hold: documents get their text extracted, so a deck that says everything in pictures arrives nearly empty. Knowledge can also arrive live through connectors, the plumbing that lets Claude read from the mail and file tools you already use. Connectors inherit your permissions. Claude sees nothing you could not already see, and anything that acts waits for a human to approve it. Connected mail is the cleanest example. Claude searches it and writes the draft, and the draft sits there until a person sends it. Nothing sends itself. The catalog of connectors and where the switches live keeps moving, so check the current app for specifics. The permission logic is the part that stays true. Let's make this an exam question. Same domain, different office. A legal operations team wants every contract review chat to use the firm's checklist and a formal tone without touching anyone's other work. Option A: every member pastes the checklist at the start of every chat. That is Maya's Friday with a legal letterhead: struck. Option B: put the checklist and the tone into each member's account-wide personal instructions. Wrong scope. Account-wide means every chat they ever open, and now their lunch plans get reviewed like contracts: struck. Option D: rename the project to contract review, use checklist, formal tone, and trust the title to do the work. You already know this one. Names and descriptions are decoration for humans. Claude never reads them. Struck. That leaves a shared project. Instructions carrying the tone and the checklist discipline, knowledge holding the checklist and the policy documents. Right, home, right, scope, stamp it, match. Project instructions are one rung on a ladder because instructions exist at more than one scope. Personal instructions follow you into every chat you open. Project instructions stay inside their project, and on business plans, the organization can set instructions that cover everyone. What belongs at any rung is decided by durability. A rule that is true every single time goes in instructions. A one-off ask stays in the prompt. And keep instructions short, they ride along in every chat they govern. So a bloated rule sheet crowds out the actual work. Now the conflict rule, where a personal instruction directly contradicts an organization instruction, the organization wins. That is not an accident. It is the gate pattern living in a settings screen. Company policy sits above personal preference by design. One more layer deserves a single sentence: skills, folders of procedure that load only when a task matches them, depth on demand instead of always on. Now, the part nobody puts on a launch checklist: what happens to Maya's tidy box after 3 months of nobody touching it? Prices move, the product sheet gets superseded, and the project keeps answering from the file it holds, fluently, with no error message anywhere. Stale knowledge does not look like a failure, it looks like a good answer, and that is exactly why it loops straight back to the verify move from episode 1. A configured workspace is a source you built, and sources you build still need checking against the world. People call this config debt, and from the outside it reads as Claude getting worse, when really the workspace got old. So when output drifts, diagnose by layer instead of prompting harder, and the first question is whether a knowledge file went stale. If so, replace it. The second question is memory. Claude also keeps an editable memory about you across chats, and one wrong entry steers every conversation until you correct it. The third question is instruction conflict. Walk the ladder in order: organization, then personal, then project. And the last question is whether a capability is simply switched off, since things like code execution sit behind toggles that vary from workplace to workplace. The cure for the whole category is boring on purpose. The project gets an owner and a review date, and superseded files get deleted the way any control document set stays alive. Maya sets a monthly reminder, a few seconds of calendar admin, and it is the whole difference between a workspace and a time capsule. So the scorecard for domain 5: recurring context gets a permanent home. Instructions say how to behave, knowledge says what is true, and the name on the box means nothing to the model. Connected sources inherit your permissions and wait for human approval, and every layer you configure needs an owner and a review date because stale files answer confidently. One final question, and it leans toward next week on purpose. Maya's company sets organization instructions, formal language everywhere, and every financial figure needs a named source. Her own personal instructions still say keep it casual, so what happens in her chats where the two collide? Option A: personal wins because it sits closest to the user. That would make governance decorative struck. Option B: Claude ignores both and falls back to defaults. No, the parts that do not conflict all still apply, struck. Option D: whichever instruction was saved most recently wins. Recency settles document versions, not authority, struck. C: the organization's instructions take precedence exactly where they conflict, and the placement lesson is the durable one. Each rule lives at the broadest scope where it is always true. Stamp it gate, and notice the fence holds even against your own settings, which is precisely what a fence is for. And Maya, her Friday sigh became a project by lunchtime, and on Monday the first chat she opened was already briefed. The clipboard stayed empty. Next episode, Domain 6, Governance. Dan asks for something that should never leave the building, and Maya has to say no the right way. The campaign Maya shipped last week is working, and Dan arrives at her desk already talking. Have Claude write personalized financial guidance emails for our customers, he says, and keep it quiet so legal doesn't slow us down. He means it as a compliment. She handled the last thing, so she can handle this. One sentence, and it hands Maya to exam traps at once. Freeze that sentence, because this is Domain 6, Governance, Risk, and Responsible Use, nearly one question in 6 on your exam. This episode runs the whole domain through Maya's week. We chooses our fair game, which data goes where, whose settings actually protect you, and who owns what ships. 2 of our 4 moves carry almost every answer here: gate and escalate. And Maya's week of studying is about to pay for itself in one conversation. Start with the first circle: personalized financial guidance sent to real customers. Anthropic's usage policy keeps a named list of domains where AI advice lands directly on a person's life. Legal questions, medical guidance, insurance decisions, lending and investing, hiring and housing, school admissions, and journalism meant for publication. The policy calls these high risk. High risk does not mean forbidden, it means the shortcut is forbidden. Before advice in those domains reaches a customer, a qualified professional in that field reviews it, a credentialed human, not a second pass by the model. And the customer is told plainly that AI helped produce what they received. So Maya's answer to Dan is not no, it is not yet. Claude drafts every email and a licensed reviewer signs off before one of them ships. That is the gate stamp doing exactly the job we hired it for. Zoom out because the exam wants you to place any proposed use on the right shelf. The policy stacks three layers, universal standards that bind every user, the high risk tier we just met, and extra guidelines for special cases like consumer facing chatbots. The universal layer is the never list fraud, deception, misleading health or legal or financial content, fake media passed off as real, misuse of personal data. Concrete version: if Dan wanted 5 realistic customer testimonials invented for a landing page, that is fabricated praise wearing a real customer's face and no wording makes it allowed. Point Claude at real survey responses instead and pull genuine quotes, each one verified back to its source, and the same tool is doing honest work. So the placement test is 2 questions: is it deceptive and does it advise or decide something consequential for a real person? Deceptive means never, consequential means gated behind review and disclosure, and everything else is ordinary work with the ordinary verification you already learned. Now flip the question from what you ask Claude to do to what you hand it on the way in. Some data carries its own rules wherever it travels, and the exam expects you to recognize the classes on site. Government identifiers and account numbers, health records, payment card data, passwords, and anything under an NDA. Each class triggers its own handling before a prompt gets written. Identifiers get minimized or stripped, and health information needs an offering configured for it with the right agreement actually signed before a single visit note goes in. Contract covered documents are not yours to place. The owner of that obligation decides, and we will meet that exact situation again before this episode ends. Back in episode 1, Maya stripped identifiers out of a spreadsheet, and redaction is the floor of this domain, not the whole skill. The trap the exam loves most here is one word: internal. It is only an internal analysis, so the rules relax, except they never do, because the trigger is what the data is, not which audience sees the output. Back to Dan's sentence and the second circle: keep it quiet so legal doesn't slow us down. Quiet is the one thing governance cannot be, because your company's AI policy sits on top of Anthropic's, and the stack only ever gets stricter on the way up. When the policy is silent or someone suggests routing around it, the move is to ask the policy owner, and nobody said no is not a yes. While we are in org territory, learn the privacy split, because it decides where work data may live. On a personal consumer account, whether your chats help improve the model is a setting you control, and how long data is kept can change with that choice. On business plans, it is the other way around. Customer content is not used for training by default, and the organization holds the controls. Toggle names, defaults, retention windows, and plan lineups all shift over time. So the durable skill is check your org's current settings, never memorize this week's menu. Now the trap: a teammate says, just turn on incognito, then we are compliant. Incognito changes what a chat is used for on Anthropic's side. It does not change whose agreement covers the data or whether you were allowed to share it at all. Wonder certificates work the same way. Anthropic holds serious ones, and their SASO2 is not your compliance. Your obligations live on your side of the contract. Time to run this domain's first exam question at full speed. While the guidance emails sit in review, Maya still owes Dan a churn analysis, and the raw export holds customer names, emails, and billing details. The company has an enterprise workspace, and her personal account honestly feels faster. 4 options. Option A: personal account with incognito on, so nothing trains the model. Incognito narrows what the chat is used for. It does not put company data under the company's agreement. Struck. Option B: personal account with the training setting switched off first. Same problem in a different toggle. Struck. Option D: personal account, then delete the conversations when the analysis is done. Deletion after the fact does not undo processing under the wrong agreement, and do it quietly then clean up is the exact anti-pattern this domain exists to catch struck. That leaves C run it in the company workspace and redact the identifiers the analysis does not even need gate the boring option, the correct option. Underneath every rule in this domain sits one idea, and Anthropic's fluency framework gives it a name diligence. It means taking responsibility for what you do with AI and how you do it. The moment a draft leaves your hands, it stops being Claude's output and becomes your work, so you own what you ship. The AI got it wrong is not a defense this exam accepts, and nobody you answer to accepts it either. Here is the quiet truth about Domain 6. These are the easiest points on the whole exam because the professional move is always the boring one. If an option feels like a clever workaround, a toggle, a disclaimer, a code name, a quiet cleanup, it is a distractor every time. Pick the answer that would sound dull said out loud to your compliance officer and take the points. So, how does Maya's week end? She took Dan's idea to Priya instead of around her, and a licensed advisor read every draft before anything shipped. The review caught guidance that was plain wrong for one group of customers. A disclosure line went in, and the emails went out days later than Dan wanted, and completely clean. Dan saw the corrections, and he stopped saying keep it quiet. That is the domain gate, the data and the high risk uses escalate whenever the call is not yours to make. One more question before we close, and it is the escalate stamp's favorite sheep. A project manager wants to load vendor contracts covered by NDAs into a Claude project to speed up renewal analysis, and the company's AI policy names Claude as approved but says nothing about contract documents either way. Option A. Proceed. The tool is approved and nothing prohibits it. An approved tool does not approve every data category, and not prohibited is self-authorization struck. Option B. Proceed after swapping vendor names for code names. Pricing and terms still identify the vendor, and the NDA question is still sitting there unanswered struck. Option D. Use a personal account since company policy only governs company workspaces. Company obligations follow company information wherever it goes, and a personal account drops the commercial protections on top of everything else struck. That leaves C. Ask the policy owner whether NDA covered documents may go in and wait for the actual answer. Escalate because silence in a policy is a question, never a permission. Next episode, Troubleshooting. The prompt that worked on Monday falls apart on Thursday, and Maya learns to diagnose instead of regenerate. Thursday afternoon, one campaign brief left in the week, and Maya reaches for the prompt that worked beautifully on Monday. Same chat, same prompt, and what comes back this time is mush, vague and generic, drifting off the brand voice. Dan needs the brief within the hour, and her cursor is already sliding toward the regenerate button. Freeze on that slide because this moment is the seventh domain of the exam, troubleshooting and optimization, about one question in 10. By the end of this episode, you will have a calm diagnosis loop for it, and you will see why regenerate was never going to save her. Because here is the strange part, nothing about the prompt changed between Monday and Thursday. Something else in this picture broke, and finding it is the skill this domain actually tests. Let's autopsy the instincts first, because the exam builds its wrong answers out of exactly these moves. Instinct 1. Hit, regenerate and hope. A regenerate changes nothing about what the model knows, so you are rolling the same dice again and calling it debugging. Instinct 2. Decide the model is the problem, switch to a different one, resend. The most common root cause of a bad output is missing or muddled context, and no model can supply context it was never given. Instinct 3. Stay in the chat and pile on more instructions in capital letters if it comes to that. Anthropic's own first aid runs the opposite direction. When output confuses you, simplify the ask, do not amplify it. In episode 1 language, this whole domain is verify and match under deadline pressure. First establish what is actually failing, then fit the fix to the fault. Here is the loop the exam wants instead. 4 steps straight from Anthropic's own troubleshooting guide. Step 1. Restate your ask simply and clearly, because a surprising amount of mush starts life as an unclear question. Step 2. Add context as if you were briefing someone with no background knowledge at all, the new contractor from our prompting episode. Step 3. If the task is complex, break it into sub-steps and run them one at a time. Step 4. Give feedback on what came back and ask for a rewrite, naming what to keep and what to change. Next to the ladder, keep the triage card because symptoms point at their own fixes. And the first row is the big one. Generic output means missing specificity, so add detail and an example of what good looks like. Off topic means the goal was unclear. Wrong format means you never showed the format. And a wobbly complex answer means the task needed splitting. Maya runs the ladder on her mushy brief, and steps 1 and 2 check out. Her ask is clear and all her context was loaded back on Monday, which is the interesting result because when the ladder clears the prompt, the fault has to leave somewhere else. Before she chases it, one line in the mush worries her more, a tidy engagement statistic she cannot remember ever measuring. This is the moment to know where wrong answers come from. Models sometimes produce fluent claims that are grounded in nothing, delivered in the same confident voice as their true ones. Training data also lacks the present, so the freshest facts are exactly where uncited memory is weakest. Confident tone is not evidence. We stamped that rule in episode 1 and it has not aged a day. The grounding fixes are mechanical. Tell Claude it is allowed to say it does not have enough information, and for document work ask for the exact quote behind each claim, withdrawing anything it cannot support. And the quiet habit underneath, when an answer will carry real weight, open the source yourself because you are the accountable one, not the model. Maya tries one clean experiment. She runs the same important ask a second time and lays the two answers side by side. They disagree, and that disagreement is not noise. Official guidance reads inconsistency across runs as a possible hallucination flag. Matching answers do not prove truth, but conflicting answers prove you must verify before you use either one. Her next move is to ask Claude to explain its reasoning step by step before the final answer, because the walkthrough exposes the faulty assumption you actually need to fix. And the reasoning hands her the real clue. The model is still honoring campaign constraints she cancelled on Tuesday. Hold that thought, because this exact skill is an exam question, so let's play it at full speed. An analyst asks Claude the same question about an uploaded dataset twice and gets two different top-line conclusions. How should she read that? Option A says the second answer supersedes the first because Claude improves within a session and no such rule exists. Nothing about the second run verified anything struck. Option B says pick the conclusion that better matches her expectation, which is confirmation bias wearing a badge struck. Option D says the dataset must be corrupted, so re-upload and retry, but identical input producing different conclusions points at generation, not at the file struck. That leaves C. Treat the inconsistency as a possible hallucination signal and require quote grounded justification from the dataset before using either answer. That is a verify stamp, and notice how the 3 wrong answers rhymed with the 3 instincts we buried at the top. Now the Thursday mystery finally solves because there were always 3 components in this picture: the prompt, the model, and the conversation itself. Monday's chat was clean. Thursday's chat is dragging 4 days of drafts, corrections, reversals, and dead constraints, and every one of them is still context. The prompt did not break, and the model did not break. The chat went stale, and stale context mushes everything it touches. You know, a chat has gone stale when cancelled rules keep resurfacing, or when an ask that used to work starts drifting. The fix is deliberately unsentimental. Start a fresh conversation and carry forward only the final constraint list and the best draft so far. You are not losing work, you are removing sediment, and the model finally reads a clean brief instead of the transcript of an argument. Maya opened the fresh chat, passes the final constraints with Monday's brief as the example, and the mush is gone on the first try. Friday morning, Maya does the optimization pass because fixing Thursday once is troubleshooting and making Thursday impossible is this domain's other half. First, right size the tool, a quick chat for a quick lookup, a deeper research run when the job is synthesis across many sources, and check the current app for exactly where each mode lives. Second, stop re explaining context that has become permanent. The brand voice, the glossary, the output template, and the audience notes all move into a project where every new chat inherits them automatically. Third, put each standing instruction at the right level, account wide preferences in your profile, campaign rules in the project, and only the truly one off details in the prompt itself. The placement test is simple. If you have typed the same sentence into more than two chats, it belongs a level up. Last, group related questions into one message with the complete context up front, fewer round trips, and cleaner answers. A stale eternal chat and a repasted glossary are exactly how Monday's magic dies by Thursday, and this pass is how you stop paying that tax every week. So the loop, when output goes bad, walk the 4 steps, read the symptom, and change something specific before you spend another attempt. When runs disagree, treat it as a verify flag, and when a chat goes stale, reset it clean instead of arguing with it. One last question to stamp the domain shut, played fast. A team lead has Claude format the week's meeting transcripts the same way every Friday, repasting her style guide and glossary into a new chat each time. What is the best optimization? Putting the rules in her account wide profile pushes meeting formatting into every unrelated conversation. Wrong scope struck. Keeping one continuous chat all quarter is the eternal chat trap we just buried struck. Asking Claude to remember the rules for next time is a conversational promise, not a configuration struck. The answer is a project, glossary, and template as knowledge, formatting rules as project instructions, and each Friday she pastes only the transcript, a clean match stamp. And Maya, her brief went out clean with time to spare. And Dan never found out what the regenerate button is for, which is fine. Next episode, the question lab. Scenario after scenario with all 7 domains mixed together until the 4 moves stop being notes and start being reflexes. It is the weekend before Maya's exam, and she has dealt herself a practice set, 8 scenario cards, face down, all 7 domains shuffled together. The real exam runs 60 questions, so 8 is a sprint, and a sprint is the point. Because by now, the 4 moves should be reflexes, not notes. Here is how the lab runs. Every scenario plays at reading speed. Each wrong answer dies with its reason, and the right one takes a stamp and a domain chip. That strip along the bottom is the scoreboard, 8 empty slots, and by the end it will show us something about this exam that no single question can. Notice the cards hold strangers, not Dan and not Priya, because on exam day every scenario arrives with faces you have never met and the moves have to travel. No warm up, first card. Card 1, a team lead wants a weekly status report format her team will reuse, tweak, and share with people outside the chat. Option regenerates the format in chat every week, and a format rebuilt weekly drifts, weekly, nothing versioned, nothing shareable, struck. Option C turns on the deep research mode, so the report writes itself, but research gathers outside information. It is not a template machine, struck. Option D creates a brand new project each week to hold that week's report, and that inverts the feature. A project is a permanent workspace, not a weekly folder, struck. That leaves B build the template as an artifact, iterate it in its own window with its versions kept, and share it beyond the conversation. Reusable standalone iterated, that is the artifact's exact job description. Stamp it match. Card 2. A finance associate uploads a long annual report, asks for the key risks, and the summary includes a precise litigation figure she cannot remember seeing anywhere. Option A accepts it because the number is specific and the tone is confident, and you have known since episode 1 that confidence is the house style, not evidence, struck. Option C regenerates the summary and keeps whichever version sounds more plausible, a beauty contest between 2 unverified guesses, struck. Option D asks Claude, are you sure? and a reassurance is more generated text from the same machine that produced the claim struck. B remains, ask for the exact quote and its location in the uploaded report behind every claim, and withdraw any claim that cannot produce one. No quote, no claim, stamp it, verify. Card 3. An insurance operations team drafts claim coverage decisions with Claude, and a manager proposes full automation for the small claims since low value means low stakes. Option automates the small ones behind a confidence threshold. But a model's confidence in itself is not a safeguard any policy recognizes. Struck. Option C automates everything and appends a disclaimer with an appeal path and a footer after the decision is not reviewed before the decision. Struck. Option D automates once a month of audits, shows a good accuracy rate, but a clean history cannot certify the next individual case, and the individual case is who the safeguard protects. Struck. B stands, a qualified professional reviews every determination before it reaches the claimant, and the claimant is told AI is involved. Insurance coverage sits on the high risk list with no small claim discount. The call belongs to a person, stamp it, escalate. Card 4. A marketing manager asks for a product launch email and gets copy that is perfectly fluent and completely off-brand. Option regenerates until a better one appears, the same dice rolled harder. Struck. Option B switches to a different model and resents, but no model on any tier knows a brand voice, it was never shown. Struck. Option D tells Claude to be more creative and less generic, which names the disappointment without adding a single requirement. Struck. C is the briefing move, reply with the audience, the offer, a length cap, and one past email that sounds like the brand as the example. Generic output means missing specificity. Feed the contractor, stamp it, match. Maya lays the timer down for a breath at the halfway mark, and the scoreboard is already telling on the exam. 4 cards in, every winning answer has been the boring professional move, the template in its proper container, the code behind the claim, the human in front of the decision, the briefing rebuilt line by line. Not one clever trick has scored a point, and that is not an accident, it is the exam's whole personality. The distractors are the shortcuts a rushed person actually reaches for, so the option that feels slick under time pressure is bait almost by definition. Hold that suspicion through the back half, it is about to earn its keep. Card 5. A project manager condenses a long research report covering 6 customer segments into a one-page brief, and every number on the brief checks out against the report. Option A says ship it. Every claim is verified, and that word verified is doing quiet mischief here, so hold A for a moment. Option C asks Claude whether anything important is missing, which invites the system that dropped the material to notice the drop struck. Option D regenerates and ships whichever version runs longer, and length has never been a measure of coverage. Struck. Now a false 2, because an output can be true in every sentence, while a segment you needed is simply gone, and no sentence anywhere announces an absence. B remains, lay the brief against the report's own structure and check what was left out. The completeness pass that accuracy checking never performs. Stamp it, verify the quiet twin from the heaviest domain back for points. Card 6. On a company business plan, a marketing manager tries to connect the team's mail so Claude can draft from it, and the connection refuses to authenticate. Option A retries with her personal mail account, which walks company mail out of the sanctioned workspace and never touches the actual blocker. Struck. Option C says upgrade to the top plan tier, but the gate here is administrative, not a price list. Struck. Option D asks IT for an API key to paste in plausible sounding plumbing. That is not how these connections get approved. Struck. B is the unglamorous truth. An organization admin switches connectors on for the whole workspace. The mail system's own administrator trusts the connection, and then she signs in and it works. Menu names move around, so keep the shape. The organization opens the gate before any individual walks through it. Stamp it, gate. Card 7 makes Maya smile because she has lived it. An analyst loses most of every Friday assembling the weekly metrics review by hand from mail, chat threads, and a folder of files. and the team wants relief without changing tools. Option A migrates everyone onto a new all-in-one reporting platform. The dramatic move that ignores the words without changing tools struck. Option C pastes screenshots of every source into a chat each week. Manual rekeying of exactly what a connector retrieves with citations attached struck. Option D automates the report end to end with no human review since the drafts cite their sources, but citations exist to make the check fast. They are not the check struck. B is Maya's own Friday from a few episodes ago. Connect Claude to the tools already in use. Let it draft the reviews citing the exact messages and files it used, and keep a named reviewer reading every draft before it moves. Augment the painful step, keep the human, stamp it match. The last card is built differently, 5 options and an instruction line that says select 2. One thought about that line before we play. The stated count is information the exam just handed you, and the next episode drills exactly what to do with it. The scene: a customer success lead has Claude draft renewal letters from an uploaded contract, and the draft quotes the contract's figures and adds a line interpreting what the termination clause legally allows. Option A sends it as is. The contract was provided so everything is grounded, but provided documents lower the risk of invention, they do not retire the check. Struck. Option C asks Claude to rate its own confidence and sends on a high score, self-graded homework, and you have struck that idea all episode struck. Option E adds a footer saying the letter was AI assisted and may contain errors, and a footer is neither a verification nor a review. It is an apology filed in advance. Struck. 2 options survive, and the card asks for 2. B. Check every quoted figure against the uploaded contract before anything goes out. That is verify. And D. The line interpreting the termination clause is legal territory, so counsel reads it before any customer does. That is escalate. One scenario: 2 required moves and neither one can stand in for the other. The set is done, so read the strip: 3 verify, 3 match, 1 gate, 2 escalate, and every one of the 7 domains touched. That distribution is the blueprint whispering. The heaviest domain on this exam is judging output, and sure enough verify stands tied for the tallest pile. Now Maya's verdict, and she is honest about it: 7 clean, 1 dropped. The drop was the double. She ranked the 2 survivors against each other, picked the one she liked better, and never used the count printed on the card. Nothing was missing from her knowledge. What failed was mechanics, and mechanics can be drilled in an evening. So she takes a fresh index card and writes 4 words on it: verify, match, gate, escalate, and that card has one more night of work ahead of it, which is exactly where we go next exam day, pacing the multiple response mechanic and the 720 cut. It is the night before Maya's exam, and everything she still plans to study fits on one index card. 4 words: verify, match, gate, escalate. The same 4 moves we have drilled all through this course. She is not learning anything new tonight, and that is on purpose. This episode is the exam day plan: how multiple response items really work, how to spend the 2 hours, what the 720 line actually asks of you, and how to read the report that comes after. None of it is knowledge, all of it is execution, and it fits on that card. So let's pack the card together, starting with the strangest gift this exam gives you. Some items on this exam have more than one correct answer, and every such item states right on the item how many responses to select. Most people read that line as extra danger, but I want you to read it as information, because the count changes what kind of thinking the question needs. Read a select 2 item like a normal question, and you hunt for the one option that fixes everything. Under that lens, an option that only does half the job looks weak, so you throw it away, and you may have just thrown away a right answer. Now apply the count. 2 answers means the exam wants 2 moves, so 2 halves of one professional response is exactly the shape to hunt for. The chips you almost discarded survive, and the one that promised everything earns a second, harder look. So here is the discipline: eliminate until the number of survivors matches the number the item stated. If more survive than the item asked for, keep eliminating, and if fewer survive, you were too harsh somewhere, go back. Now the clock, 60 questions in 2 hours, which works out to 2 minutes for each one. 2 minutes is roomy for a question you recognize and quick send for the one you do not. So Maya runs 2 passes. Pass 1, she answers everything she recognizes on sight, and the moment an item starts to fight back, she flags it and moves on without guilt. That first pass banks every point she already owns, and it tells her exactly how much time the flagged questions can have. Pass 2, she returns to the flags carrying the 4 moves and asks which one the scenario is begging for. If an item still will not crack, she eliminates to the count, picks the strongest survivors and lets it go, because no single question is worth the ones she never reached. Here is where the answers go. Your 60 questions become one skilled score and 720 passes. This exam is criterion referenced, which is a dry phrase hiding a comforting fact. You are measured against a fixed standard, not against the other people testing that day. There is no curve, so nobody in that room is your competition, and a strong batch of candidates cannot move the line on you. The line was set in advance by subject matter experts asking one question: what should a minimally qualified associate reliably get right? Reliably is the word to take home because a fixed line pays the person who makes the standard move every single time, not the person who is occasionally brilliant. That is why we drilled a pattern instead of trivia. Consistency is a skill you can rehearse, and this line was built to reward it. When it is over, you get more than a pass or a fail. The report also shows the percentage you got right in each of the 7 domains. Read it as a mirror of the blueprint map from episode 1, the same rungs now measured on you. One caution: those domain percentages are there to help you understand your result. The pass decision comes from the total scaled score alone. There is no per domain hurdle, so a weak domain cannot fail you on its own, and a strong one cannot save you by itself either. If the day goes badly, that same report becomes the study map for the next attempt. Point the hours at the shortest bars. Retakes exist and they come with waiting periods. The current guide has the exact rules, and none of this is tonight's problem. Morning off, and Maya's only goal is to make the next hour boring. She checks in early because arriving too late is treated like not arriving at all, and the fee does not come back. Her photo ID is out, and the name on it matches her registration letter for letter because that match is checked exactly. If yours does not match, fix the registration well before exam day, not at the check-in desk. The desk is cleared the way the rules ask. No notes, no phone, no smartwatch, no second screen, and she stays in the camera's view for the whole session. So the index card stays outside the room, which is fine because the card was always a rehearsal for her memory. Policies like these can shift. So read the exam day section of the current guide the week before, and the morning will hold no surprises. One honest thing before we drill: this credential is valid for about a year, and then it asks to be renewed. Some people hear that and feel shortchanged. A certificate with an expiry date sounds like a gym membership. I read it the other way. This is a habit certificate, not a trophy. The tools under it change fast, so the credential only means something while the person holding it stays current. Renewing on time is a light review. Letting it lapse means the full exam again, and the exact terms live in the current guide. So do not treat tomorrow as the finish line. It is the day the working habits get counted, and about a year from now they get counted again. Let's run one flagged item from past 2 together the way Maya will. Launch week, Dan wants last quarter's customer feedback analyzed for the announcement email, and the export file is full of customer names and email addresses. Claude's draft summary quotes. One headline statistic that Dan wants printed in the email itself. The item asks which 2 actions Maya should take, and there is the gift already too. Upload the export as it is. The analysis is internal anyway. B. Remove the names and email addresses before uploading. C. Ask Claude to double check its own statistic and trust a confident yes. D. Check the quoted statistic against the raw export before the email ships. E. Skip the analysis and write the email from memory. A false internal use is not a policy exemption. We buried that excuse in the governance episode. C. False. A model vouching for itself is not evidence. That was the first lesson of this course. E is the overreaction, walking away from work that has a safe path. Count the survivors B and D, exactly 2, and the item asked for 2, so the count confirms the elimination. B is gate, protect the data before it leaves the boundary, and D is verify, check the claim against its source before an audience sees it. Read this as a single answer question and you would sit there ranking B against D, but the two told you to stop ranking. The scenario needs both moves. So, exam day, the count on a multiple response item is information. Eliminate until your survivors match it. 60 questions, 2 hours, 2 passes, bank what you know first and return to the flags. 720 passes, and the line is fixed. So the standard move every time beats brilliance sometimes. Afterward, the report hands you 7 domain percentages, a mirror of the map you started with. Maya checks in early name matching, desk cleared, and the very first item on her screen says select 2. She almost smiles because that is not a threat anymore. That is the exam handing her information. Next episode, the Capstone, one Workday, all 7 domains, Maya's launch day played straight through with every move on the card. Launch day, and Maya is in before the office lights finish waking up. The quarterly push she has carried through this entire course goes live this morning. In the corner of her desk sits her score report, a pass, and under it the 7 small bars showing how she did in each domain. She passed weeks ago, and today is the first day big enough to ask whether that exam certified working habits are just a good memory. So here is the finale's whole plan. We watch one real workday from this desk, ink a rung every time a domain from the map walks in, and find out by tonight whether those 7 rungs were ever separate things at all. First job of the day, the launch brief that goes to the whole team before anything switches on. A few weeks ago, this was the 15 instruction mega prompt, and you remember what that produced. This morning, she fills 4 slots instead. The context, the ask, the audience, and what a good brief looks like, with last quarter's best one attached as the sample. Then, the cheapest safeguard in the course, list your plan and your assumptions first, and let me review before you write. The plan comes back, assuming the partner bundle is part of today's launch, and it slipped to next quarter, so one sentence of review just saved every document downstream. One clean brief, no mush, and the first rung inks, prompting and task execution. Mid-morning, the customer announcement is drafted, and there it is, a tidy statistic wearing a confident footnote. Maya has met this exact sentence before, the one whose survey turned out not to exist. So she does not ask Claude whether it is sure, because a model vouching for itself was the first trap this course ever showed you. She asks for the supporting quote, opens the survey file herself, and reads the line the number came from. The number is real this time, but it belongs to last quarter's survey, so she swaps in the current figure and keeps the receipt attached. The heaviest domain on the whole exam, settled at her desk in minutes, verify, check the claim against the source it points at. Just before lunch, the launch is live and 2 very different jobs arrive in the same minute. 100 short routine replies to customers and 1 deep read of the early performance number. The old Maya ran both on the same brain at the same setting, and Dan almost went shopping for a different tool over the bill. Today the replies run on the fast cheap tier because on well-scoped volume, speed and cost matter more than deep reasoning, and the exam itself rewards choosing down. The deep dive gets the capable brain with room to think, nobody is waiting on it, and a wrong read costs more than the compute ever will. Rung 3 product and model selection, fit the brain to the job and the bill stops being an argument. Early afternoon, the first launch update is due to the wider company, and this is the workflow Maya built the week Dan wanted everything rolled out by Friday. Claude drafts the update from the connected sources and cites the exact messages and files it pulled from. Then the draft reaches the box that never existed in the old row, the named human review. And today, that box earns its ink. The reviewer follows one citation and finds a figure quoted from the rehearsal thread instead of the live dashboard. 2 minutes to fix in private, zero corrections in public, which is the entire case for building the review into the process instead of hoping. Rung 4, workflow integration, and notice the review box is simply the verify move wearing a process. Now the domain you will not actually see today, which is exactly the point. Nobody pastes the brand voice, nobody hunts for the product sheet, every launch chat opens inside the project already briefed, and the Friday of 5 pastes never comes back. A teammate who joined this week starts her first chat and gets the house voice on the first try without being told a thing. And the price sheet Claude keeps quoting is the current one because the owner and review date Maya set caught the superseded file before launch week. Rung 5 inks quietly because configuration done right shows up as an absence, the pace and the stale answers that never happen. Mid-afternoon, Dan lands at her desk, glowing, and asks for one more thing. Run the customer list through Claude and find which segments are biting. The export carries names, emails, and account spend, and it is only internal. He adds a sentence you now hear as a trap and not a reassurance. Maya strips the identifiers the analysis never needed and runs it inside the company workspace. Gate, protect the data first, then do the work. But the partner revenue column sits under an NDA, and whether that may go in was never her call to make. So she walks it to Priya's office, and the whole conversation takes about 2 minutes because the one-page routine Priya initialed weeks ago already names this exact case. Priya approves the redacted run, holds the partner column back, and the analysis is on Dan's screen before his coffee cools. Rung 6, governance. And notice what made the escalation fast, not nerve, a routine that existed before the question did. Late in the day, the launch chat itself starts to wobble. The same ask that came back crisp at dawn now comes back as mush. The old reflex is regenerate, and the slightly older reflex is to blame the model. Maya does neither. She runs the diagnosis, the prompt has not changed, and the model has not changed. So the suspect is the third component, the conversation. This chat has dragged every dead draft and cancelled constraint since before sunrise, the Monday to Thursday rod, compressed into a single day. She opens a fresh chat carrying only the final constraints and this morning's best draft as the example, and the crisp version is back on the first try. Wrong 7, troubleshooting, diagnosed instead of regenerated, and look at the wall, the ladder is full. 7 domains crossed one desk in a single working day, and not one of them arrived wearing its exam label. One last question before we close the course. Fresh scenario, official shape, and it needs 2 moves at once, which is your graduation exam. The launch went well, and Dan wants a public results page quoting Claude's analysis. Early customers cut onboarding time nearly in half. One of those early customers is a financial services firm, and company policy requires legal review before any public claim involving a regulated client. The item asks which 2 actions Maya takes before the page goes live, and there is the gift you learned on exam day 2. A. Ask Claude to confirm the figure and proceed on a confident yes. B. Check the figure against the underlying launch data before it is quoted anywhere. C. Add a footnote saying results may vary. D. Route the page through the required legal review before publication. E. Hold the page until next quarter brings fuller data. A false first, a model vouching for itself is not evidence. That was the opening lesson of this entire course. C. False, a footnote is neither verification nor the review the policy asks for. A disclaimer is paint. E is the overreaction, walking away from work that has a safe path, struck. Count the survivors, B and D, exactly 2, and the count confirms the elimination. B is verify the claim gets checked against its source before an audience exists. And D is escalate the public claim about a regulated client goes to the people whose call it is. One scenario, two moves in the same breath, and that is the exam's final honesty. Real days never file their problems one domain at a time. So, launch day, every domain came through this room once, and the ladder you studied turned out to be a map of an ordinary working day. Dan no longer says, send it now, and Priya no longer has to ask who verified this because the answer is pinned to the wall of how this team works. Maya's certificate sits in a drawer, and the thing it certified walked around the office all day. If your exam is ahead, take the checkpoint and read the 7 bars on your report as the map for wherever the habits are still thin. But here the send off straight. The exam is a checkpoint. The habits are the point, and they were the point on every rung of that ladder. If your work is code against the API or designing agent systems, the developer and architect tracks are your next room and their courses will be waiting. Keep using this on real work. That was Maya's whole secret, and now it is yours.